We just want to welcome you to our session of the ODP 101 Waivers and Beyond, Pairing Services and Supports with Your Vision for an Everyday Life. My name is Amy Millar. I am the statewide lead for supporting families at the Office of Developmental Programs. I'm also the state representative for the state of Pennsylvania in the National Community of Practice and charting the life course. And I'm here co-presenting with the lovely Katie Marie Wilson, and I'll let her introduce herself, and then we will get started.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to be here with you guys today. I work with ODP as well, the Office of Developmental Programs, so you'll hear me call it ODP. I work in policy, so I help write the waivers, which I will explain what they are, and that's what I do. So before we get started, so we have these things called email listservs at ODP where we send out communications, things about trainings. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. So I have this thing I'm going to pass out right now, and I'm going to, if you guys want to sign up for the listserv, sign it. If you don't want to, please don't put your name on this. If you sign up on this, like I said, you're going to get emails about communications, trainings, things that we're releasing to the field. And then also, if you can check the box that corresponds to who you are, okay? And then we'll get started.
All right, thank you, Katie Marie. Just a little housekeeping. We know that you may have several questions, and we're just going to ask you to hold them to the end so that we can make sure that we get through all of the material, and then we will answer your questions to the best of our ability. So I just want to go over briefly what we're going to talk about this morning, and this morning is really going to be about an overview of what does the Office of Developmental Programs do, and really break down our waivers, which I don't know, have any of you ever printed off one of them? It's like about this long, right? Yeah? Yep, we have them at our house. We use them as booster seats. So it can be a lot to digest, so we're going to do that in 60 minutes. And we are also going to really talk about the favorite part of my job, which is supporting strong visions and high expectations for individuals and families, and how we can use our visions and our high expectations to kind of support what we're getting from the system as well. And we're also going to share some resources to help you, whether you are a professional or you're a family member or a self-advocate. I think it's important, whenever I do trainings for organizations, I really like to take some time to talk about their mission statement. So I want to share with you the mission statement of the Office of Developmental Programs, which is to support Pennsylvanians with developmental disabilities to achieve greater independence, choice, opportunities in their lives. The office seeks to continuously improve an effective system of accessible services and supports that are flexible, innovative, and person-centered. So with that, I want to take some time to talk about what is the Supporting Families Initiative and how this kind of supports the work that we do at our office. And this is one of my favorite slides when we're talking about the service system, right? So we all know that the system has shifted and evolved over the last few decades and few years. And so when I think about it, too, is all of us exist as an individual within our family and our community. When there is an individual with a disability, the traditional service system model is to provide what? Services, right? So when we provide services, and I'm a visual learner, so do you notice anything about that middle slide? What happens when we put those services in place? There's a separation, there's a barrier. And it even comes down in how we provide services, right? So when you go to Target, do you announce yourself, I am now entering the community? Come on, kids, get in the van, we're going to the community. None of you talk about yourselves like that, right? Although I will say I did a presentation in the Northeast, and there were several nuns in the audience, and they started giggling at this part. And afterwards, they apologized, of course, because they were nuns. And I was like, it's okay, 4 Hail Marys and you're good. And so they said, but Sister Mary Catherine does tell us to get in the van. We're going into the community today. So outside of Sister Mary Catherine in Scranton, most of us do not typically talk about ourselves like that. But when we talk about individuals with disabilities, we do, right? Today, they are going to the community. We even call it community participation. Ugh, right? And here's the thing about community inclusion. We talk about it all the time amongst ourselves as advocates and as providers and family members, and yet we forgot to tell the community, right? And so when we're talking about integrating services and supports, this is exactly what we're talking about. We're not saying eliminate or reduce services. We're saying, can we find ways to provide them that don't create a barrier? And what else is available to an individual and a family to make that pathway so that there is no barrier, that we're actually supporting them to participate? Now, I don't say this blindly, that there's not pressures, right? We know this full well. This can be the expectations and values and cultures of peoples and communities, right? Federal policy, that's super easy and fun, right? The consideration of all people, the demands of services, our budget constraints, right? This can really impact our ability to do this differently. And then the capacity of the workforce. So when I say that, think about it twofold. The jobs for individuals and also those that are supporting them, right? We don't have any turnover in our system, right? No, right? For family members, have you had more than like 5 supports coordinators, right? Or more? I talked to one family that's on like number 24, right? That's a lot of transition. So that makes it difficult to get going. So where did this kind of come from? And so this initiative of supporting families really started in 2011 with a report called the Wingspread Report. And if you're not familiar with it, I strongly encourage you to look at it. It's a really easy document. It's only about, I think, 17 pages. And this is one of the first times that family members sat down with those that are creating services for people with individuals. And we talk a lot in advocacy about like nothing about me without me. But so much of state policy around supporting families and individuals is written without individuals and families. So that's what the point of the Wingspread Report was about, was highlighting that something needs to shift and families have more needs than we're providing. Because 1 in 4 people are getting services. That means 3 in 4 people are not getting state services. And 89% of people with disabilities live with their families. So families need support. So what does that look like? And for us, through the life course, we talk about it kind of in these 3 buckets. And one of our training partners I'll highlight today is the Family Network. And you'll see them as a vendor, and they've actually got the 3 buckets on their table. And it's about discovery and navigation. You need information and trainings. You need goods and services, both tangible and not. Connecting and networking. You need to know who's been there, right? There's a difference between looking at a list of available dentists in your community and talking to your neighbor to find out who is the dentist that will have the patience to work with my son or daughter and their needs, right? We don't have a list service for that, do we, right? That's how we found Dr. Yampolsky, was talking to Katie down the street, right? And we love him. He's 110, but we love him. And this, again, just highlights those statistics that I was talking about that came from the Wingspread Report. About 25% are actually receiving services, and that 89% of people are living with their family. But yet our service system is created on an institutional model, right? But 89% of people are not living an institutional model life. So we need to shift and change. And so from that became the Supporting Families Initiative. And that gave birth to the National Community of Practice. So that came out in 2012. If you've ever written a grant or worked on a grant project, for a report to come out to influence a grant RFP and a grant to be written and granted to 6 states that said we want to do this in 12 months. I just don't know if you know state government, but that's like lightning speed. That's like a 4-minute mile, right? When we're talking about government processes. So something was different about this that we hadn't seen before. And so this is where that life course framework and tools began. And in the 4th year, 11 states joined, and Pennsylvania was one of them. And this also represents a relationship between the disability agency, which in Pennsylvania is the Office of Developmental Programs, and that state's Developmental Disabilities Council. I have the privilege and honor that I have actually been a representative on our DD Council as a family representative and self-advocate for the last 5 years. So I have a really unique opportunity to be in both arenas and see how we are working together to address the needs of families. What I also really love about being the state facilitator for our state is that when I'm on those calls, I'm hearing about what's working in Oregon and what's not, and how did Kansas address like a rural transportation issue in a new innovative way? How did they get, a ride share to come after a grant for transportation to make it accessible, right? So I want to hear about that, and it helps all of us to stop working in silos. Because I don't know if you notice, but a lot of times with state government work, we go, no, don't look at us, Jersey, right? Don't look at us, Delaware, right? Get your own supports coordinators, But now we're saying, no, we need to really work together. And that's what this initiative is about. And you can learn more on the website of supportstofamilies.org. This is just a map. It hasn't been updated because actually 6 more states joined just this past year in June officially, which is really exciting. So when you think about that, almost half our nation in an 8-year span has said, there's something to this initiative and we want to be a part of it. So what does it look like in Pennsylvania? Here in Pennsylvania, we have developed the PA Family Network, which if those of you that may have remembered the partnership, this is really about supporting peer-to-peer delivery. Because we all know that lived experience has a lot more fidelity than something that the system could ever supply. And I do find that when I'm working with a family, my experience as Noah, Michaela, and Madeline's mom can sometimes go a lot further than me working at ODP, right? Sometimes I don't tell them that I work for ODP if they're really angry, right? And so the other part of that is we support Self-Advocates United as one. They are also here presenting. I encourage you to check out their presentations. And so they employ self-advocates, and they do trainings, and they are part of it. And I'll talk a little bit more about what their role is in the leadership of this initiative in a minute. We continue to uphold and teach the concepts of person-centered thinking because, like I said before, nothing about me without me. Putting the person first is so important in actually changing the way in which we provide services and community inclusion. The other parts of this is being a part of the PA Sibling Network because we do believe that siblings are a demographic that really need to be talked about. My daughter, Michaela, is going to be 15, and she has made it super clear, and even we'll talk about a trajectory. On her trajectory, it says not be Noah's caretaker. That's part of her good life, is that she wants to be a sister. She doesn't want to be his caretaker, so she wants me to figure out what's that going to look like as they get older. And I often joke because Michaela has some pretty significant medical needs, like, I'm more worried about you, honey, right? But it's true, right? We have to consider that because many siblings don't feel that they had a choice, and they would like to continue to care about their sibling and not for their sibling. So we want to make sure that they have resources and support. And then we also, we want to make sure that our waivers are aligned with that, right? Because that's super important. If we're not embedding that people need to have strong visions and high expectations and person-centered, even language written, and having supported decision-making and thinking about people having the rights and choices to navigate their own lives, we have to make sure that that's happening. And we're always evolving, we're always learning. I never feel that this is something that I hope that one day there will be no need for us to have initiatives to support families. I really do hope to work myself out of a job. But until then, I think there's a lot of work to do. So let's just quickly talk about our training partners, which is the PA Family Network. They are 22 advisors across the state, and they come with lived experiences. All of them are a family member with either a sibling or an immediate family member, but most are parents. And we also have the understanding that the demographics of families are shifting and changing. One of the fastest growing family units in our communities are grandparents raising grandchildren, right? So we've just accelerated the timeline of future planning for that individual by 20, 30, sometimes even 40 years, right? And so we have 2 advisors that are actually grandparents that have custody and are raising grandchildren with disabilities. We have bilingual advisors. We even have an advisor that is fluent in American Sign Language as we continue to reach more and more of our communities. And we hope to expand our offerings in other languages as well to make sure that all people have access to this information. Their workshops and one-on-one mentoring is completely free to family members. There is no eligibility. There's no 57-page packet to fill out to see if you qualify. There is no qualification. If you are a family, which all of us exist within a family, then you can come to a workshop. The workshops range from charting the life course to healthy sexuality, to community safety, life after high school. And actually, some of those presentations will be here during this wonderful conference. So I encourage you to check them out. The other thing is that I love is their one-on-one mentoring. And the mentoring is really unique because it is a service, so to speak, right? But we do not limit it to like 2 billable units, right? You will have gotten to your vision for a good life in 15 minutes, right? Like, we don't do that. So some families, it may be coffee for an hour, right? And just having a conversation. We may not ever get to the tools. And in some families, it's 7 or 8 touch points over a course of a year till they really feel that they have all the resources that they needed. So that's what's really unique. And it's not even about pairing them where you are geographically, but making sure you're with the right advisor. So we can Skype with families. We have done for several of our cyber charters, we have done workshops, webcasts in the evenings for families that are used to that way of connecting with others. So there are a lot of ways. So I encourage you to check them out and sign up for their newsletter so that you can find out where there will be local workshops in your community. And if you want a workshop, you would want to reach out to them. And we'll have their contact information later in one of the slides. This is just a picture of one of the workshops that they did. They do one very similar to this presentation for families on the waiver changes and how that can impact your life domains. And Katie Marie will touch on that in a little bit. The other part of this initiative was that we created regional collaboratives. This is our state map of the different collaboratives. You'll notice that all but just a few states are colored in. And even those, those counties are in white. They may not be official collaboratives, but I can tell you that they are very active in working with the life course framework, being connected to their other collaboratives around them, and are started a process of becoming an official collaborative. It's really just writing a letter to me, and then they're a collaborative. So they're just a little slow in the letter writing process, okay? But I can tell you that they're doing the work, which is really exciting. We have 67 counties in our state. This is also the map of my daily commute as the statewide lead for this initiative. I know every road and pothole in the state of Pennsylvania well. So, but I think about this map and think about it. For Pennsylvania, we can't even agree on one football team. Yeah, right? Pittsburgh, do you know that they put French fries on salads? Yeah, they do. It's a thing, right? So if you think about that for a minute, there are 67 individualized, very diverse communities, even within those 67 counties, and every single one of them are saying, you're right, we need to support families and we need to do things differently. So that's really exciting for us. These are just a couple of pictures of some of the activities. In some of the counties, it can look like community picnics. It can be resource fairs. It can be hosting a all-inclusive like Zumba in the park. This can be totally different things. And supporting families doesn't always equate to providing services. Like I said, families also need to be connected and have opportunities to network and also just learn. And so we want to create that. Up in the north central part, they love their river boats. And it was awesome to get to go out with a bunch of families and have dinner on the river and take a sunset cruise with them. And for many of them, this was like a family night out that they may not have been able to afford. And it really allowed them to have this really fun night out as a family, but then also get connected with the things that they need to be connected with. And so we want to continue to do that. SAU1 is one of our partners, and last year when we came together to talk about our state plans, we realized that while they work with us as a partner, that there was no one that was sitting on our state level leadership team for this initiative from SAU1. And it was like, well, that's really ridiculous. And so we changed that. And so we actually have 3 teams of self-advocates. So 6 self-advocates serve now as leaders at the state level team with us in working about how are we going to support the collaboratives, the family network, and support their work and making sure that we're influencing policy effectively. And so we have a rural team, so we have 2 self-advocates that live in rural communities to represent those, and then we have 2 that are living in urban downtown city settings, so they're in our urban team, and then and then we have our state center team, because we do know that here in Pennsylvania we still have over 700 people that still live at state centers. And so while we are working to make sure that everyone has the right to live where they want to, there are still 700 people that live there, and we need to represent them and make sure that they're living their best life. So we have 2 self-advocates that live at the Polk Center that sit with us and help us make sure that we are supporting all people in Pennsylvania. So the core belief of this initiative and of the Life Course framework is that all people and their families have the right to live, love, work, play, and I always add learn, and actually I put this forward to the National Community of Practice state, and they have now this year added learn, because I think that's really important, that we have the right to learn and pursue our life aspirations in their community. And again, we didn't self-segregate and say people with disabilities have this right, because we are so notorious for doing that. It's that all people have the right to do this. And that's what's so great about this initiative is this is about supporting all people to have a strong vision and high expectations. So when I use the word Life Course framework, I'm really talking about some visuals and the principles. So it's all about the individual, which is the North Star and center part of the circle, that their vision should be the guidance. So even as you're navigating services, and as Katie Marie talks to you in a little bit about the different services that we provide, we really want to make sure that as you're navigating that the individual that we're supporting, their vision is what's driving everything, right? And that all of us exist within the context of our family, right? So if 89% of people are living with their families, we also have to make sure we're supporting the family. We're going to talk briefly about the life domains in a minute, but this is really 6 different areas, and the resources that you had in the back, these are going to go into more detail of that and break them down, but it's about your daily life and employment. What do you do during the day? Your social and spirituality, your health and safety, security, healthy living, right? Citizenship and advocacy, what's my valued role in the community? So when you think about that, most of our life activities would fall into like those 6 categories. And so that blue book that you had in the back really details this a little bit more and gives you questions for each of those areas. So if you are, 39 and working on employment, or you're transitioning from high school, you can go to those different domains and that life age and say, okay, these are some of the questions I should be considering right now. And so it doesn't have all the answers, but it has a heck of a lot of the questions, which is really important. We talked a little bit earlier about filling up people's buckets. So when you think about the framework, it's about the person's vision, their family, how they live their life, what do they need to support it, right? Like what do they need as far as information, connecting, and goods and services. And then lastly, that outer ring is that integrated, and we call it the integrated star because it has 5 points. Looking outside of that, traditional service system services are not always the only support, and they shouldn't be, right? Do you only use the DMV to navigate your life, right? No, but many of you are entitled to that service, right? You utilize that eligibility-specific service, but that's not the only thing you use to get here today, right? So when we think about that, we need to think about what technology do we have? What personal strengths and assets do we have? What relationships do we have? And what community resources do we have? And then eligibility. So instead of it only being looking through eligibility And we're not letting eligibility off the hook. I want to be super clear about that. I am not saying that at all. But I'm saying that for all of us, we need to make sure that we're tapping into all those resources. I am a person with a disability. I have some pretty significant cognitive delays and some learning disabilities, and this impacted my speech and my ability to learn. And I had a great IEP. I had great supports in high school, but there was no way I was going to college. And my high school guidance counselor, Mr. Lesko, pulled me aside in the hallway one day in his bad sweater and his bad breath, and he said, Amy, I noticed you signed up for the college tour. We need to talk about this because you're not going to college. And my seat on that college tour bus was taken away from me. And he said, just go play your sports. And I did. And a college recruiter saw me. And just by the way, I always now have to clarify this thanks to Aunt Becky at Full House. My parents did not bribe that college recruiter. Okay, I just want to be crystal clear about that I actually was a talented field hockey player. And so the university recruited me, and then they said, oh, whoa, we saw your transcripts. and I said, well, about that, I really can't read. And so they sent me to a summer program that was new that year to make the university more accessible. And we're talking about 1998. So this university was far ahead of the trend, right? And so I went with about 20 other individuals to a summer program, and I would play field hockey in the afternoon, and I would sit with a reading specialist all day, pretty much. And by the end of that, I was able to test into the entrance exams to be able to enter the university as a full-time student. And I share that story because when you think about my life, my personal strength and asset was the support that got me into college, not my IEP, not my support teacher, not the plans that we had, but my own personal strength and asset. And I don't think I would be working in policy at ODP had I not been able to keep a field hockey ball out of a goal, right? Who would have thunk? So I want you to think about that, is that if you are a professional supporting someone, you need to think about that their personal strengths and assets shouldn't just be on page 3 bullet points of what's awesome about them, right? That should actually be what is a support to them, because it could be what unlocks the door for them. We won't go into all of the principles of the life course because I want to make sure that Katie Marie has time to go through those services, but we've kind of already touched on it, right? All people, the family cycle, making sure that we are working towards strong visions, those life outcomes, the life domains, filling up people's buckets, integrating supports, and influencing policy. This is one of my favorite quotes in doing this work. Eric Carter, he is a wonderful researcher, and he says that the most powerful force in changing transition outcomes for young people with significant disabilities is not ultimately found in the transition plans that we craft, the education service that we offer, the instruction we provide, or the systems we build, but rather in the expectations and aspirations individual parents hold for their sons and daughters, right? Just like in my story, having high expectations and a strong vision, that is what's going to unlock a door, right? It's so important. All of these other efforts are no doubt essential, but absent families equipped with a clear, compelling vision for a good life after high school, we're missing something utterly essential, right? So we want to make sure that we give every student and every individual what they need to succeed, but we have to have those high expectations too. I do these trainings across the state all the time, and sometimes I get asked this question, right? Okay, well, that's really great, but what about parents that have too high of expectations? And for me, that's usually my response. Like, what about them? Like, I don't understand this question. And this is typically my face. Right? So, like, right? Like, I don't understand this. And so, a young woman had given me the example. She says, well, I support a young man who really, he wants to be mayor. Every time we talk about employment goals, he's just talking about he wants to be mayor of our local city, right? And I said, okay. Well, he has significant needs and this, and she's going into all the buts, right? And I said, well, is he registered to vote? Have you volunteered at a polling place? Does he know what political party aligns with his ideals? Does he understand how difficult it is to work for state government? because I can talk to him, right? That's not to dash his dreams, right? But the thing is, you haven't done anything to even start towards that goal. And who knows, he might be mayor, or he might end up doing something else. But it's not your job to determine whether or not someone's dream is too big or too small for them. That's not your job. Your job is to support them. So this is what I usually challenge people that ask this question. My answer when I'm asked if they have too high expectations is, well, support them or get out of their way. I do always like to add that another person had asked me, well, I have a young man that when we talk about employment goals, all he wants to talk about is he wants to marry someone like Taylor Swift and have 9 cars in the driveway. And I said, does he understand how expensive fast women and cars are? Because he's going to need like 9 jobs, not 1. And you haven't even gotten him 1. He needs 9. So you better get going on that. And if he's having trouble being motivated, I just heard 3 things: pretty ladies, cars, and music. So why don't we start with those, you know? So that's my point, is it's not about limiting people or saying what's possible to them. That's not your job. Your job as professionals is to support their high visions and expectations. And why is it important to have a vision? Because it sets the expectation for the future, right? We don't want to just arrive in our life, but we all have, right? Whether it be a relationship, a job, where we live, right? How did I get here? Who are you? And what am I doing, right? This wasn't the life that I dreamed of, right? But we're in control of that. I think it's important to just highlight again those life domains because it feeds into our vision. So there is a resource that was in the back that was, it looks like this. It's the tool to developing your vision. And so it breaks the vision down by life domain. So you will have your grand vision, but then let's talk about, like, what does employment look like? Where do I live? What's my vision for that, right? Where do I want to be connected? What friendships? Is friendship a part of my good life, right? So with that, life experiences and life transitions, right? This happens. We all experience life. We all go through transitions. Things change. But it's important when we're doing this, I think that the best time to start, of course, is at birth, right? The next best time to start is today. So you start where you are, and you keep building. But I think allowing people to have those natural life experiences, I think to my own son, you know, when we were in the early stages of going through the autism diagnosis and what that looked like and navigating Noah's world, I was in survival mode, right? I had a 4-year-old with medical complications. I had a newborn baby, and I'm navigating this whole place pretty much on my own. And I could barely figure out how to keep clothes clean and food on the table, let alone try to figure out how to best support his good life, right? I wasn't thinking about employment for him, but I probably should have. And the things that would have supported his employment was like letting him have chores, right? So now I have a 13-year-old that's allergic to my dishwasher, and not because he has autism, right? Because I didn't require it. And I learned my lesson a few weeks back. I said, Noah, I just need you to put your dishes in the sink. And he threw the plate across the kitchen into the sink, and it shattered everywhere, right? And I was like, to be clear, I meant walk your plate over to the sink and put it in. Thank you. So, right? So we want to make sure people have those natural things. Because I tell you what, even my kids, they have got great banging IEPs. But I couldn't get him invited to a birthday party, right? There were no friends for my son in those early years. And those are so important to building skills that is going to help us get to our good life. So I just want to highlight a couple of the tools for you. And there are, just so you know, the Family Network, like I said, is doing several presentations to go into further how to use these. But, you know, they are really helpful, and we have a couple of them in the back. And so I did talk about the tool for developing a vision, but we also have these 4-pagers that are available for download that are at each life stage. The transition one looks at that early adulthood, transitional age, so it's asking those questions, looking about options, giving the family an opportunity to really talk about what's that going to look like for life after high school. We mentioned the Blue Book earlier. This, again, is a great resource for you. And I really encourage you to take a chance to play with them, look at them, talk about what's your vision for your life, for your loved one. The trajectory that's back there is really great because on the one side is for the individual and the other side is for the family. Because I don't know about you, but my mom's vision was a little bit different than mine. I think that seems to be pretty standard, right? A little bit, right? So it's a good way to facilitate that conversation about where we're not on the same page, right? If Billy thinks he's going to have his own apartment, and Mom's saying he's going to live with me forever, right? We should probably talk about that before he's 27, right? So this is a way to kind of help facilitate those conversations. And one of the things, it is difficult because this is not required, but we have asked a lot of our supports coordinator organizations, our counties, our providers to be getting familiar with these tools and using them and supporting families. And my vision for the state for these tools is not that every person served by ODP will have a trajectory. Like, ooh, no, that sounds awful, right? I don't want it to be a checkbox. But you know what I do want to see happen is that every person in Pennsylvania has a strong vision and high expectations and using the tools whichever way it works for them. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Katie Marie to talk a little bit more about who we are and what we do and provide. Yep.
All right, wait, let's figure this out.
We're trying. Technical assistance is not a part of my good life. I just want to be clear.
All right, can you guys hear me? Yes? Okay. First off, isn't Amy amazing? Every time I present after her, I'm like, oh, how am I going to do this? I could just listen to you speak all day. All right, so real quick, there was a bunch of handouts that Amy was talking about on the back table. If you have not received them, I encourage you to go get them really quick because I'm going to be referencing them as we go throughout the rest of the presentation. All right, so the first thing that you guys might have received was the Everyday Life booklet. Who has seen that before? Great, yeah, so this guides everything that we do at ODP. And again, the Office of Developmental Programs, ODP is the acronym for it. And yes, there's a lot of acronyms, so if I don't explain something, please tell me. So at ODP, the Everyday Lives was created in 1991, and we expanded it in 2016 with our stakeholders. This guides everything we do at ODP. And Everyday Life is about opportunities, relationships, responsibilities, people's rights. And this was created with people like you in mind. Inside the booklet, there is this sheet that has our values and our mission. And again, when we write policies and programs that we create, we use this. Yeah?
I don't believe there's any more of those books. No.
The Everyday Life books?
Yeah, I'll get them.
Okay.
I'll grab some.
Do we have?
Holding up the projector.
Okay, so, oh, they're right here. Oh, I see.
I'll get them.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay, so as soon as that gets passed out, you'll have one of the Everyday Lives booklets. So today I'm gonna jump and talk about a lot of things at ODP. So if you guys have questions, I would really recommend writing them down and possibly asking them at the end, or if they're specific to you, to a family, to anything, my email's at the end and you can email me, because I'm gonna be touching a lot of things as we go on. So before I go, this is an ODP 101 presentation. Who here is like the first time hearing about ODP, maybe new to the services? A few of you guys? You guys are like my favorite to speak to. Welcome, I'm so glad you guys are here. I hope I can teach you a few things about ODP. So, let's go. So ODP, yep, oh, there's the hints for that. So in ODP, we have things called waivers. A waiver is, when I think of a waiver, I think of something being waived. So back in the day, it was more common for services being provided in an institution. Now we are waiving those services and we're going to offer them in the community. And that's what a waiver does. In ODP, there's 4 waivers. There's the consolidated waiver, the person-family directed support waiver, which is PFDS. Oh, do I need to be recorded over here?
Because you're our fading in and out.
Okay.
Not your voice. You're going in front of the screen and then we miss your face.
Gotcha. See, and I like to dance. So here's something else about me that I didn't share. I have a 3-month-old, and I think I dance a lot now because I'm so used to moving all the time. So, all right, I'll try to stay stationary. So what I was saying, we have 4 waivers in ODP. We have the consolidated waiver, the person family directed support waiver, which I will call PFDS. We have the community living waiver, which is our newest waiver as of January 2017. And we have the adult autism waiver. So one thing I wanted to point out to you who are familiar with ODP, the Bureau of Autism Services is now called the Bureau of Supports for Autism and Special Populations. We expanded the unit to incorporate more. So you will also see that I did not talk about this ACAP. And that's because the Adult Community Autism Program, which I call ACAP, is not a waiver, it's a managed care program. And that's another area that you guys get services in. Okay, so ACAP, like I said, is a managed care program. It's not a waiver. It's funded differently, and it works just a little different. It's currently available in just limited counties: Lancaster, Dauphin, Chester, and I think Cumberland. Yes. What happens is they have one main provider that oversees a bunch of other providers who render services. So if you look at that first handout, see, I like to move a lot. If you look at that first handout that says part of your packet, this lists all the services that are available in the ACAP managed care program. And if you have more questions about ACAP, I also included a link on here for you guys to reference later. They should be on the back. Is there none left? All right, so I'm going to continue talking about the waivers a little bit and the differences between them. So as you'll see on this screen, I broke it down into each waiver and the differences. So the consolidated, the PFDS, and the community living waiver serve everybody with an intellectual disability, autism, or developmental disability up until the age of 8, with the likelihood that it will turn into an intellectual disability or autism. And as you will see, the adult autism waiver is only for autism 21 and over. You will also see on here the unduplicated people served, and what that means is that's how many people we serve in a year. So that's what's projected for this year. This slide goes over the differences with the waiver cap funding. So another thing with the waiver, how it's funded, is it's state money and federal money come together. It's a match. And there is some waivers that have a funding capacity. So as you will see, the community living waiver, like I said, is the newest waiver, has a funding cap of $70,000. The PFDS waiver has a cap of $33,000, and the consolidated does not. AAW, which is not on here because they have slightly different services, also does not have a funding cap. Also on here is the services that are not offered in each waiver. So this goes to the second handout. So if you go to that black and white handout and you flip to the second page, I printed out for each of you the different services in each waiver. So you can look at that as a comparison of what's offered. This slide is just a general overview of some of the services we offer. And what I like about this is it also shows the employment services. I think there is a breakout session later today for employment. So if you guys have specific questions about that, I really recommend you going there. We have our subject matter expert at ODP presenting there with some different program offices. So I think that'll be a really great resource. Also on here is a service provider information, and I quickly wanted to go over what this is for people who are new to ODP world. So in ODP we have, when you're registered with the county or you are known to the intellectual disability and autism services, you might get a supports coordinator. A supports coordinator is like a gatekeeper for services. They have one of the most important jobs in our field. Is there any SEs in here? You girls rock. Yeah, they are like the lead people in the field. They connect you with services and supports. So you guys, as soon as you're registered with the county, you guys have the option of getting a supports coordinator to help you navigate that field. I also wanted to point out, because some people don't know this, in the waivers, people can have the choice of self-directing their services. Self-direction means that you can pick your own staff, manage your own staff, pick your own services. Now, there is a specific list of services with that, but I quickly just wanted to share that with you. And if you want more information on that, come see me afterwards, and I will give you a contact on who to contact for that. And a supports broker can help, absolutely. All right, we're moving on to eligibility and enrollment. Okay, so I'm going to, yeah.
What about the other waivers, like attendant care or the independent waivers for our young adults who may not have an intellectual disability diagnosis?
So the question was, what about the other waivers that might be out there for people who may not be eligible for these waivers? And we are going to talk about that during this presentation, but because those are outside of ODP, I am not an expert on them at all, but I do have information in here for you guys as we go on. Thanks for pointing that out. Okay, so I'm going to back up just a second and explain a waiver one more time. So a waiver is something that they're waiving something that was traditionally done. So like I said, services were traditionally rendered in an institution, and now we're offering these services in the community. That's why we have waivers. And under Medicaid, Pennsylvania has what's called medical assistance. And under medical assistance is where these waivers are. And like I said, there's the funding comes from federal and state government. And we have 4 waivers in ODP. Okay, so great. Katie, you told me all this stuff. Who's eligible for this? Where do I start? So if you have not contacted your county, that's where you need to start. Like I said, they will help you find services, get you set up with the system, or there's another contact for the Intellectual Disability Service customer service line who can also help you with this. I think you guys received the PowerPoint, so hopefully these will help you when you have that. You can click on them and get more information. I also, what? Yep, yeah. So what I'm going to do, I have a few. Okay. Those are just to be handed out if they need them now. Okay. So what Amy's going to pass out, and this is where I was going to do it. So this is a picture of the state and the different regions and the counties in them. And per county, I printed out information for you all for a number and an email address. So Amy's going to pass it around. Because it's such a big document, we thought technology. If you have a cell phone, take a picture of your county, and that way you can have it. For those of you who do not have a cell phone, I printed out extra copies, and afterwards I can give you the information. Okay? So this is how you start. You find your county, and you go and you talk to them. So who's eligible? So people who are eligible have a diagnosis of intellectual disability. Yeah.
So I just have a quick question about how do people that have no idea, so I'm a special ed teacher, and I'm educated on
Can I actually pause you for a second? So we have a mic, and because of accessibility, I would like to pass that around for questions. So give me 1 second. I put it on.
Hello?
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, you're great.
It just came into my mind. So I'm a special education teacher and a transition coordinator, and I run a program called the Transitions Program. So I'm really good about linking my parents and my students to this kind of stuff. But what if they aren't? So most districts I work with, and we serve 47 districts across 7 counties, they don't link families to ODP and talk to them about waivers. How do you suggest that we get this out more with districts being aware, counselors, other people, because parents don't know that this is out there unless someone like us tells them and then helps them step by step.
I love your question. I think Amy is going to take a stab at it.
So I would say a couple of strategies are conferences like this, right? To help spread the word and to connect transition coordinators and different county representatives too, to see how they can support the education system. And I think that this is actually a great venue for those things to happen. We also do have a partnership with the transition councils across the state. And so we are working to make sure that all transition coordinators are not only exposed to what ODP has to offer, but that life course framework. Like, having those high expectations. Stop saying that, well, he may be 17, but only has the intellect of, no, we don't need to limit people. And we also don't need to say like, well, they're not going to be able to work. So not putting those limits on and changing the conversation that's happening in education too takes a partnership with people like you coming to places like this to share the information with more. So it spreads that way. I think too, making sure that everything is more accessible, and we're going to talk about like our website and things like that where people can be connected, and the ways in which we're working to improve communication through the state too, is also making sure like being on the listserv so that you know what's coming out from ODP is really important. If you are working in education and representing a school, your school should be connected to us. So that would be it. I'll take your question, but then we really want to save questions to the end just so that Katie Marie can get through all the services.
And Amy, really quick, I'm sorry, I was passing something out. Did you also talk about how there's a family network also available? Oh, is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then the PA Family Network does a transition workshop, and they have strong relationships with different school districts across the state, and it is improving, I think. But again, it's connecting those school districts to host a webinar or even webinar or a workshop in their district, which also it doesn't require them to really do anything but open up the school building for us to come in, right?
So just one of the things I want to talk to is I have a son with autism. He's 23 years old. I had signed him up with the waiver, the autism waiver at 18. My frustration lies in the fact that we don't really understand where the money's coming from and how people are being contacted. So he's 23. We haven't heard from the program. Okay. We don't know where he stands in getting any kinds of services. At one point in time, there was somebody had said to me at the bureau, well, they'll call you and they'll make you an offer at that time and you can refuse it, and if you don't refuse it, that's fine. Never heard. And then the other piece is I work with families also that come to me, and I always have OVR is one of the first things we talk to families about. But then we find that there's a frustration level with families, and there was a frustration level for me too in helping my son navigate OVR and being able to get the services. So what can we say to parents, and how do we find out if there's monies available and if these services are possible, or if things are not happening in the same way the parents think? Because sometimes services don't come till a year out or better.
Yeah. Thank you. So,
Thank you.
What?
do you want to go?
Well, I was just going to say, she is going to talk about that, of like the process of who to contact and things like that. But and we'll try to do things as broad as possible. But really, it is following up with your supports coordinator. It is the first thing, and if you don't have one, talking to your going back to your county, and if you the worksheet that we are sending around, whichever county that you live in, that person's contact is right there for you to take a picture of it today, and then you can also email Katie Marie and or myself, and we can help you get you connected to follow up with you in your situation. Katie Marie, did you have other things to add?
So also there's that ODP customer service line that we would recommend you calling as well if those avenues aren't working first. But if you guys, so I'm going to keep going because we only have about, 40 minutes left. I'm going to end this hopefully with some time left to get questions. If you guys have questions that are personal questions, email me or email Amy, and we'll direct you to the person who can try to help you. And then, like I said at the end, we'll leave it open for questions that are applicable to everybody in the room. Okay? So if you guys are okay, I'm going to keep going so I can get this information out. All right? All right. Here we go. So back to eligibility. So it's anybody who has an intellectual disability, autism, or a diagnosis of a developmental disability up until the age of 8, with the likelihood, like I said, of it being an intellectual disability or autism. Also, on a medical evaluation that recommends institutional needs, like a level of care. And what this means is that that individual could get services in an institution. And that's why there needs a waiver to waive those services to be offered in a community. And there's also a financial eligibility part, which your county would help you with. So this is just a general overview. There's also an ODP bulletin out there, so if you guys wanted to type this into Google, this would pop up, and you can read more about that there as well. In your handout, so I think this is the next one. Let's see. I think has the Bureau of Autism Services, BAS programs ages 21 and older. It's a two-sider. This gives you more information on who to contact for eligibility. And I just wanted to say, I got these handouts from the ASSERT website. It's a paautism.org, I think. If you have not been on that website, they have such good resources that I really recommend you checking out. All right. Let's say you contacted your county and you're eligible. What happens next? So you'll be offered a supports coordinator, supports coordination, and they will help you get set up with applying for a waiver. If funding is available and there's a waiver available, excuse me, they will help you with enrollment, and then they will also start creating an individual support plan for you. And what that is it's a big document that has all your services and excuse me, and the level of need that your team and your family would use to support you. So say you have a sports coordinator and they're going to register you for a waiver and there's no funding and there's not a waiver available quite yet. What they will do is they'll put you on a waiting list. And they'll do that through the prioritization of urgency of needs for services. Big fancy thing for a waiting list. They get you hooked up with, they do an assessment with you to see what level, how urgent your needs are, and they put you on that waiting list for a waiver. In the meantime, if there's not a waiver available, they'll identify other community supports and work with you to see what else is out there. Okay, we're gonna talk about some services related to graduation. Who in here is planning for graduation, just recently graduated at the age of transition? Anybody? A few in the back? Yeah. So as I was driving here today, I don't know, so I work on this in the office, right? And I didn't make this connection until I was driving. My cousin just went through this process. She just turned 21, she just graduated, she has autism. And you know what, last night, this is what triggered it. Last night I saw a picture on Facebook, her drinking her beer for the first time. Yep, so she just went through this process about signing up with the county, getting a supports coordinator, and now she's on a waiting list. It's never too early to plan. I always recommend talking to your supports coordinator and thinking about your future, using the life course tools to help plan that. Okay, so in 2018 to 2019, the governor's budget included 800 includes 800 graduates started in July and 800 graduates in 2019 to get a waiver when they graduate. People who are served in these waivers were people who had who are on the emergency waiting list. They were enrolled in a waiver. People who did not have an emergency waiting list could be served in the PFDS waiver. And then there were slots, people who were in the PFDS waiver who had services that was exceeding that funding cap could be moved to the community living waiver to get a bigger funding cap so those people can continue their services. And that opened more waivers for for graduates to get those waivers. This year, ODP is able to serve people right away in the waivers with turnover. And how this happens is the administrative entity, which after you're registered with the county, an administrative entity is like an oversight. They will help register you for these waivers, enroll you for the graduates. So we are able to start serving people right away into the waivers in the PFDS waiver. Okay, so we're going to go over waiver service specific to age. Okay, so I pulled these out of our waivers, and here's a list of them with ages. Another good tool for you guys to have is the ISP manual, which is the Individual Support Plan Manual, and I have a link here that you guys can access later. It has all the services in there and has a breadth of information and of what each service does. So ODP and the waivers are the payer of last resort. And what that means is CMS, which is the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, says that we can't pay for things that somebody else pays for. So if there's services that are already out there, we can't also offer it. So as you will see on here, for example, the first one, the behavioral support, it says 21 and over. And the reason for that is in Medicaid, there is an early and periodic screening, diagnosis, and treatment. Say that 10 times fast, EPSDT. There's services in that children up to the age of 21 are entitled to use. And that's why we, and ODP, the waivers don't fund that. So this is a list of services with age limits. And we're going to go over some of them as we go. It's not a full list of services. I just pulled some out that as I was going. So it's not a full list. Thank you for pointing that out. So as I continue, I'm going to go through services, and just like that, I'm not going through every single service. I pointed out some services that I thought might be important for children who are transitioning. So this ties into the life course tools that Amy was talking about, and one of the domains is the daily life and employment. So these are just some services offered in the waiver. There's an employment service, a benefits counseling, an education support service, and a community participation support. And like I said, there is a breakout session coming up with employment, and I really recommend you guys going to that if you have questions about employment. All right. So this is just a quick overview and a description of what the different employment services are. There's also a link in here for you to access later that has a quick guide of what the services are. But so I'm going to actually work starting with small group employment and quickly describe the differences. So small group employment is typically seen in a small group with people with intellectual disabilities. They can work together in a factory, out in the community, but they're paid at least minimum wage. And then you also have supported employment, which is for people who haven't had a job before or have had a job but couldn't sustain it. There's that service as well that's available. And then there's advanced supported employment, which is an enhanced service of supported employment. And that's for individuals who have no job experience, can't hold a job for more than 6 months, and need a little bit extra support. So those are just 3 employment services that are offered in the waiver, and a really quick overview of the differences with them. So these are some statistics that just came out. So our waivers have been serving almost 55,000 people in Pennsylvania. As of the end of April, there was almost 5,000 people signed up for employment services. And there's 15% of those people who already received a competitive integrated employment job. And what that means is that's a job in the community just like any of us would work at for minimum wage, working next to somebody who may not have a disability. Okay, so I'm talking about employment, and some people always have questions about what is the supplemental security income implication? What's going to happen if my son or daughter work, or what happens if I work? What happens to my extra income? So right away, we want to tell you that we don't want the fear of losing your benefits scare you off. The Commonwealth offers a plethora of different services that can help you with your benefits. So I'm always going to recommend first to contact your Social Security field office, and they will help you get information with that. And then there's also the Work Incentives Planning and Assistance, which I call WIPA. And I think I have in your packet that I gave you guys, there is per region of where you live a contact. So this is what I would recommend contacting to see how working would impact your benefits. And in the waiver, we also have benefits counseling, which mirrors what WIPA does. And you have to go through WIPA first to get that service. But they're very similar, and they help you with benefits counseling, work incentives, and focus on employment benefits. And it's 10 hours a year. This slide just has more WIPA information for you, and there's 3 more resources available. The Social Security Red Book, the Ticket to Work, and the ABLE account. So I recommend also checking these out. I also have brochures up here, and the reason why they're up here is because unfortunately I don't have enough for almost 70 people, but if you're interested in one afterwards, come up. I do have a few. The ABLE account is a way, the PA Treasury Department created this, and it's a way for people with disabilities to save money while they work without it affecting their benefits. Okay? All right, 2 more services. Excuse me. We also have education support in our waiver. And I think this is a really cool one. This is for people who would like to further their education outside of high school. So possibly go to a college, possibly go to any type of educational, I can't think of the word on top of my head. What? No. Yes, post-secondary education. Yeah, I'm thinking of a specific school. Who said trade school? That was it. Sorry, I was having a moment. Yeah, trade school. So this would help cover that. That helps cover general like registration fees, on-campus peer support. It helps with those type of services. So there is an education support service in the waiver that is offered. There's also community participation support, which a lot of our individuals are registered for. That they're out in the community, they're working on different skills, that it helps with, if they're interested in employment, it helps build those skills. So this is another service in the waiver that some individuals have access to. So I also wanted to talk about community living and what services are offered for this, because I think when I became 16 to 18, I wanted to know where I was going to live next. I didn't want to live with my mom and dad for the rest of my life. So what things are available? So there is 4 services. There's possibly more in the waiver, but these are 4 that I picked out. There's supportive living, life sharing, residential rehabilitation, and there's a housing transition into Tennessee sustaining service that I'll describe. So the one that people are most familiar with is residential rehabilitation, but in the field, I think they call it a group home. And prior to ODP, I was a direct support professional for many years. So I rendered services to individuals who lived in a group home. So this is one service that is offered in the waiver for individuals who, a different housing option, a way of living. But supported living is a cool one, and it's fairly new. This is for individuals who want to live in a private home, so maybe their own personal home, and staff come into their house and they deliver services to them. There's also life sharing, and I'm sharing a lot about myself with you guys, but that's all right. But prior to ODP as well, I lived with a family with life sharing, so I have personal ties with that as well. And that's when an individual may live with someone who's not related to them, so they live in someone's house, or it can be a relative, and that's fairly new as well. So those are some living type of housing situations. There's also this housing transition into Tennessee sustaining services. And this will help individuals with planning, with setting up the move, being successful tenants. And so this is another service that is offered in the waivers. All right, I know I'm going kind of fast, but I want to leave room for comments. So I'm going to give you some more resources. So what are some options or alternative for students? So I kind of already touched on this a little bit, but there's the Adult Autism Waiver, which is a waiver that ODP also has, but also the ACAP program, which is that managed care program. And I gave you links and phone numbers to these, so if you wanted to contact them and find out more information. That paautism.org is an awesome website. I recommend you checking that out as well. And I think a lot of that on there it can even relate to people with intellectual disabilities. Really good resources. And this comes back to your question that was in the back. There is other waivers available that is not through ODP. And I have some information in here. I'm not the expert at all, but this is just for you guys to take away with. I don't think the aging waiver necessarily relates to this conference, but that's on here. So I'm not going to go over these right now, but there is other waivers out there for people to get services for. And on here is where you would contact and see if you're eligible. So I gave you that phone number and website. I'm sure all of you guys are already doing this. Conversations with school is super important. Seeing what the school can offer, seeing what connections they have. Also going through WIPA if you're working, it's just about your benefits. We already went over. The Office of Vocational Rehabilitation is super important if you are interested, if you're an individual looking for services for employment. And I can't say this enough, I really recommend you going to that breakout session about employment because they'll talk about this. And there's another resource on there, the Pennsylvania Secondary Transition Guide, which has another plethora of resources for you. So the EPSDT, which I briefly discussed, I have a link up there because I think sometimes people don't know they have access to this, and there's benefits on there for children up to the age of 21. Amy already talked about the Self-Advocates United as one, SAU1. So if you're an individual and you would like to learn about how to be a self-advocate, I recommend contacting them. There may be other self-advocacy organizations out there in Pennsylvania that they could link you to. And the PA Family Network is also up there. So you leave today and you might have questions. So I'm always going to say contact your county first. They're going to be the ones to help you with eligibility, to get you set up. After you're set up, there's more of a chain of command that you can call. You can always call that ODP customer service line at any time, though. That does not have to be step 4. You are more than welcome to call that, and we can get questions answered for you. MyODP.org is an awesome tool as well. We post at ODP all of our communications, our trainings, anything that pertains to the field that would be listed on here, so I recommend checking that out. I also included all the waivers. So some of the services I hit today, I didn't hit all of them because there's a lot. They can be found in these waivers, and it describes what each service does. ISP manual, which I talked about. And then there's other sources on here that I think would be good for you guys. And our information's here. So I'm going to open the last 15 minutes up for questions. But if you guys have any personal questions that might not apply to the whole group, please email us, and we'll hook you up with someone who can help you, or if I can.
What I'm going to do, just so that we can make sure we capture your question, is I'll bring you the mic, but don't start asking your question till you have the mic, okay? And again, just to clarify, the entire presentation is in the conference application, so you can download it, and all the links in there are live for you too.
Thank you both so much for the presentation. If I can add a comment to the person on the autism spectrum, the family with a child on the autism spectrum, adult child, and if I'm wrong, please correct this, but my understanding is that in the last iteration of the waiver, that not only, it used to not be this way, right? You signed up for the autism waiver and you waited and waited and waited for services, which you still can, but you should still be able to get supports coordination while you're waiting. That is different. And if you have not had a supports coordinator assigned to you, call the county and get one. The other thing you can do is now you can register for the other waiver under ODP for ID and autism. It is not based on IQ anymore. It's still based on needs. So register for the other waiver with your county, because that might be a faster process. Just saying, very few autism waivers every year.
And I'm glad that you said that, because I just went through this with my cousin who I mentioned, and she was on the waiting list for both of them because you never know when one's going to open. So thank you for pointing that out. That's really important.
Okay.
I work in primary health care, and as another good way, I refer all my special needs kids to get registered with their county. What exactly, when they register, does that mean? I know it means they can get supports coordination, but parents say, well, do I go on a list? Are you going to follow me?
Sure. So I'll start, and you can add too. But I would say part of that is letting us know that who you are, right? Because think about that one slide when I talked about like 1 in 4, right? And we thought we were servicing everybody, right? So we don't even know everyone. And so one, it is to identify that there is a need. And then it goes through that process of eligibility, doing the PUNS form, things like that. So it gets the ball moving to see what's available. And it may or may not be our services. Like Katie Marie said, it could be the Office of Long-Term Living. It could be, it could even be CHC, which is Community Health Choices, depending on the individual's needs, right? So it may or may not be with us, but it starts that process. So when they reach out to the county, it's a way to go through the intake process. So there's a process in each county, and each county does do it a little bit differently, but that would begin that intake process.
Yep.
Do you also help them sign up for medical assistance?
Yes, absolutely. That's a part of the process.
Yep, and like Amy was saying, they will help that person with the documents they may need.
Yes.
They'll lead that person through the process. Yep.
There was a side comment too about asking about Social Security connections, and so yes, that is. But it's also the Family Network and some of our other training partners also talk about like what's available to you, making sure that you know everything that you're eligible for and what you can have access to, right? And then I'll come to you, okay?
If you're a parent, where do you get the PowerPoint?
So I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's an app that you can get the PowerPoint from. Is that right? I haven't used the app yet. Oh, okay.
What is it?
So to answer to, on your folder is that QR code, and if you snap that, that's going to download the app. Sorry, the Syracuse is coming out a little bit, sorry.
Second question was, we talked about a community living waiver. Just to go a little deeper so I understand that, there's a cap of $70,000 on that. So that means whether you have a private home, a group home, or whatever the situation is, funding would be there later in life for to offset some of that cost through that money? Is that how that works?
So how it works is the cap will cover services that the individual is using. So for some reason, your supports coordinator will help you manage so you don't go over that cap, because that's all you can use within a fiscal year, but that will continue every year as you have the waiver. If you can't access that PowerPoint, come and talk to me afterwards. Okay.
I'm a parent, and my daughter's 19.
Yeah.
And she has autism, and then she also has a disease that is taking her ability to walk. We just recently found out that she's having problems showering. I mean, is there a waiver that would help me in the house with like everyday living situations? Because I'm disabled too, and I can't do everything for her with, you know, the other 2 kids in the house. And it's getting to be a little bit harder from last year to this year from her abilities. What waiver do I apply for? Because I haven't applied for any of them yet.
So I would contact your county, and they will help you after you are, if they deem you're eligible to get a waiver. That supports coordinator will help you make those decisions on what fits your child's need.
We do have a sports coordinator.
So I would definitely talk to her.
We just recently got her.
Okay.
Okay.
Number 3 or 4.
So
Yeah.
number 3 or 4. Okay.
Yeah, talk to her, and like I said, there's that chain of command that you can reach out to, and, okay, yeah, good question.
I'm a parent of a child with disabilities, but also I'm a family advocate and work with in a mental health placement. But the kids I work with are some of the most severe dual diagnosis in the state. And so right now and always, it's that difficulty of finding that placement because they aren't able to, because they need that kind of continuum of care and change of staff. And of course, I mean, I understand funding is an issue, and I always say that, but it's very difficult when I have so many, and they are getting institutionalized from a placement because there's just nowhere for them to go because they can't, they need that level of care. So is there any suggestions you could give me on where to start? I mean, we do get creative. I mean, we've had CWS help with that, in different placements, but these are, unfortunately, children, that are going to, I mean, not that it's a bad thing, but they are going to need that level of care for the rest of their life. And, I know that funding is an issue, but I want to do what's best for them.
Yeah, we hear this a lot. ODP might not be able to, just like you said, because of how many waivers we have, but there's other waivers out there. There's other services.
So the one thing that I will add is that there is the dual diagnosis treatment team, and there's a lot of people working on this across the state. There's several of us that do come together to talk about that. And I think one thing that we didn't have time to really touch on, because we wanted to make sure that we could get through the waiver stuff, is that there's a lot of cross-system partnerships that are happening, whether that's web collaboration, but having the Office of Mental Health and Substance Abuse and the Office of Developmental Programs do it. Right. So, yes, but, okay, so I got confused because you said you worked for a mental health provider. Yeah. So, but yeah, so our waivers too, we recognize that. So the Bureau of Autism is a part of the Office of Developmental Programs. And like it was mentioned earlier, is that the ID waivers can serve them now. We've changed some of that. But finding placements is difficult. Is difficult, yeah. So we're working on, we are, it's an ever need, but yeah.
If you have specific questions about, I keep saying this, but talk to the county, or if you have a sports, I know.
Well, a lot of them, I told them about the graduation waivers. Because a lot of them didn't know.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I just said I had a client that I mentioned about the graduation waiver and stuff they didn't know. So I kind of passed them on slides to let them know. So that's the difficulty too, is sometimes I'm trying to.
Yeah, the information isn't disseminated to the field like it should.
And
yeah.
people don't know what they don't know. Yeah. And we see that all the time. Right, so we'll keep working on
You're
that.
doing great.
Any other questions? Okay. I'm gonna get my steps in today.
This might be a more specific question, but is there anyone that you know of that I can reach out to? My daughter goes to an online charter school, and they know nothing about transition services. Is there anyone specific? Because they kind of look at me like I'm crazy.
So one is you can email me and we can get connected, and I can reach out to the school and talk to them and help support them in connecting with the family network, either myself. So there was one cyber charter in our state that I actually did an in-service training for their staff. So it's available to them. So I can certainly make the connection for you if you email me. Okay.
I even think, I would even email anybody at ODP, and maybe we could set up a specific training or something like Amy was describing.
And I also just want to point out that the transition councils do include representatives from cyber charters. So if they're not connected to a transition coordinator council, we can help you within the counties that are the charter services to connect them to those councils. So they could be because they're just getting started or whatever. So we'll help you with that. I saw the hand over here. Excuse me.
I was just going to make a suggestion for the lady in the back, was get in touch with your intermediate unit that's the closest to you, that is where you live, as well as your home school district, the local school district, and reach out to them. It is amazing how many people forget that even though your student might be in an alternative program or they may be in a cyber program, you do have a local school district that is there to help serve you as well, and you have every right to contact them and seek out their assistance and resources that they may have. So I would suggest doing that. But if you don't get a hold of somebody, talk to your local intermediate unit and get in touch with them, because they will. That's where the transition coordinating councils are mandated to be brought through, so they should have resources for you to do that.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, you have the resources in the PowerPoint, and we hope that this has been kind of helpful, right? So we really appreciate it. I just want to thank Katie Murray. She's such a wonderful resource in our policy department, and I can tell you that she is very dedicated to the work that she does for families and individuals. So I appreciate her, and it's always a pleasure.
And we're going to be here for a few minutes, so if you guys have any specific questions and you want to come pick our brains, we'll be here.
All right, and if you did not get an Everyday Lives book, I can take it out from the projector stand. So, oh, there's one more question. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so if the sign up for email, see, it was just one person away. So if you did not sign up, make sure that you give us your contact information so you can stay in touch with us on the specific listservs that are pertinent to you. And then also that county list, if you were looking for your specific county, take a picture of your county information. Thank you, guys.